If I told you that the secret to better mental health, more stable blood sugar, and like a highly resilient gut microbiome was hiding inside one of the oldest, most carb-heavy foods in human history, you'd probably think I was setting up a punchline.
Right. I mean, it
What?
sounds completely counterintuitive.
It really does, because for decades we've been conditioned to look at a simple slice of white bread as just empty calories. But today's deep dive is going to, well, completely dismantle that assumption. We're looking at a stack of sources that reveal true sourdough isn't just a baking method, it is literally a 3,500-year-old biotechnology.
Yeah, and the science backing this up is just wild.
It is. We're pulling from the nutritional biochemistry breakdowns at Healthline, some really practical, hands-on fermentation mechanics from cultured food life, and this deeply compelling clinical research from Dr. Vanessa Kimball over at the Sourdough School.
And honestly, the contrast in these sources is what makes this topic so critical for anyone paying attention to their diet today.
Mm.
We're looking at how a microscopic, living ecosystem was essentially just erased from our food system by the demands of modern convenience.
Which is so frustrating.
Totally. So our mission today is to uncover that lost biological mechanism, examine how industrial baking has been faking it for decades, and figure out why bringing this ancient microbial partnership back into your kitchen might actually be the key to fixing modern metabolic and digestive issues.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we can even begin to understand why sourdough acts like a superfood in the body, we have to look under the microscope at what it actually is, right? Because the sources make it explicitly clear that true sourdough is radically different from the conventional bread sitting on grocery store shelves. I mean, we're talking about a process that originated in ancient Egypt around 1500 BC.
Yeah, to understand the mechanism here, you have to isolate the leavening agent, basically the biological engine that makes the bread rise. If you look at standard commercial bread, the industry relies on a single, highly isolated strain of yeast. It's called Saccharomyces cerevisiae. And this commercial baker's yeast was cultivated for one specific trait, which is speed.
Just getting it done fast.
Exactly. It respires rapidly, pumps out a massive amount of carbon dioxide in a very short window, and boom, you get a predictable rise. But true sourdough abandons that single-strain model entirely. It relies on a starter.
And a starter is like a living thing, right?
It is. It's a highly complex symbiotic community of wild yeasts and lactic acid bacteria that are naturally present on the grain itself and in the environment.
See, the idea that this ecosystem is just hovering on the wheat, waiting for water to activate it, is such a massive shift from tearing open a foil packet of instant yeast.
It really is a completely different paradigm.
But looking at the biology, I struggle to understand how these wild strains survive together. Like, if the lactic acid bacteria are constantly pumping out acid, wouldn't that hostile environment just kill off the yeast entirely?
You'd think so. But what's fascinating here is the evolutionary adaptation of these specific wild yeasts.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the wild strains found in a starter have completely different cell wall structures compared to commercial yeast. They've evolved these specialized proton pumps that constantly flush excess acid out of their cells.
Wow, so they're literally built for it.
Exactly. So while the lactic acid bacteria drop the pH of the dough down to around 3.5, which is an acidity level that would instantly neutralize commercial baker's yeast, the wild yeast thrives.
That is incredible.
And they don't even compete for the same food. The wild yeast typically consumes glucose while leaving the maltose entirely for the lactic acid bacteria. It's a perfectly calibrated biological division of labor.
So they're coexisting in this highly acidic fortress that they built together, protecting the dough from invading pathogens while they slowly metabolize the starches. It's like a microwave dinner versus a slow-cooked stew, you know?
That's a perfect way to describe it.
But wait, if commercial baker's yeast does the job of rising the bread in 45 minutes, why does true sourdough take anywhere from 7 to 36 hours? What are those microbes actually doing with all that extra time?
Well, that time is the whole point. But industrial bakeries didn't see it that way. In the early 1960s, the food industry decided that waiting a day and a half for bread to ferment was an unacceptable hit to their profit margins.
Right, because time is money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that financial pressure led to the widespread adoption of the Chorleywood bread process. They engineered a way to use intense mechanical shear, literally beating the dough with high-speed mixers, combined with solid fats, dough conditioners, and excessive amounts of that commercial yeast.
So they basically condensed a 36-hour biological fermentation into a 45-minute mechanical assembly line.
Yes. They remove the entire microbial ecosystem just to get the product wrapped in plastic faster.
It's practically a biological lobotomy of the grain.
It really is. And because true sourdough has seen a massive resurgence recently, the sources point out this rather deceptive legal loophole. Industrial producers want the premium price tag of sourdough, but they refuse to invest the 36 hours. So they just fake it.
Wait, how do you fake sourdough?
Well, in many countries, there's no strict legal definition protecting the word sourdough. So industrial bakeries use that rapid 45-minute process to get the volume, and then they inject sourdough powder.
Sourdough powder, you're kidding.
No, it's essentially just dehydrated, dead starter, or they use artificial acetic acid just to mimic the tangy flavor.
Wow. I'm looking at the chemistry in the Healthline article, and trying to fake that flavor with a single powdered acid seems laughable when you realize what the real starter's actually doing. Because during that 36-hour window, those wild microbes are synthesizing 196 distinct volatile compounds.
The complexity of those compounds is staggering. As the bacteria and yeast metabolize the amino acids and sugars, they produce this vast array of alcohols, aldehydes, and esters.
Like what kind of flavors?
Well, we're talking about compounds like isoamyl alcohol, which gives a subtle banana-like aroma, or hexanol, which gives off notes of freshly cut grass, plus these deep-roasted, nutty, and floral profiles. A factory simply cannot synthesize that biochemical symphony with a dusting of sour powder.
But this brings up a massive point of friction for me. If I'm a baker and my end goal is purely structural, like I just want the dough to puff up so I can bake it, and commercial yeast achieves that in 45 minutes, what is the biological incentive to wait 36 hours? Is this massive investment of time truly just to develop a better flavor profile?
Not at all. Flavor is merely the byproduct. The primary function of those 36 hours is profound biochemical transformation. What the lactic acid bacteria are actually executing is a microscopic pre-digestion process.
Pre-digestion.
Yes, they're fundamentally dismantling the defensive architecture of the grain.
The defensive architecture. The sources frame this perfectly when discussing whole grains because, we are constantly told to eat whole grains for the mineral content, right? The iron, the zinc, the magnesium.
Right, but Healthline highlights a brutal biological catch. Grains contain a compound called phytic acid.
Phytic acid. This is the anti-nutrient, right?
Exactly. Phytic acid is an incredibly effective survival mechanism for the seed. Its molecular structure aggressively binds to essential minerals. The seed uses this to hoard its nutritional payload, locking it away until the conditions are perfect to sprout.
So it's protecting itself.
Right. And in the context of human digestion, you can consume large quantities of unfermented whole wheat, but your digestive tract lacks the necessary enzymes to break that lock. The minerals remain trapped and pass completely unabsorbed through your system.
So think of phytic acid as a biological padlock that the wheat seed uses to secure its internal vault of minerals. We can swallow the padlock, but we don't have the key. So how does the sourdough starter actually pick that lock?
The key is acidity. As the lactic acid bacteria ferment, they flood the dough with lactic and acetic acids, which drops the pH. And this highly acidic environment acts as a chemical trigger for an enzyme naturally dormant within the flour called phytase.
Okay, so the acid wakes up the phytase.
Yes. When the pH drops, the phytase wakes up and systematically chops the phosphorus molecules right off the phytic acid ring. It completely dismantles the padlock. Clinical research shows a proper sourdough fermentation can deactivate up to 70% of the phytic acid in the dough.
70%. Oh, wow. That is an astonishing metabolic advantage. By simply giving the bacteria time, we are structurally altering the grain before it ever hits our mouths, making all of those biominerals highly available for our bodies to actually absorb.
Exactly. But the predigestion doesn't stop at unlocking minerals. It actively disarms the specific compounds that make modern bread so difficult for people to digest.
Right, because so many people complain about feeling bloated or sluggish after eating regular bread.
Yeah, that's usually the FODMAPs and gluten proteins. And the same proteolytic enzymes activated by the acidic environment don't just target phytic acid. They systematically attack the complex protein networks of gluten, chopping them into significantly smaller, degraded fragments.
Now, we should be highly specific here based on the clinical data. This degradation does not make the bread safe for someone with diagnosed celiac disease because the immune triggers are different.
Absolutely, that's a crucial distinction. It is not safe for celiacs. But for the massive demographic of people dealing with non-celiac gluten sensitivity, the people who just feel chronically bloated, this microbial pre-chopping, is a game changer.
It really is.
And it pairs directly with the breakdown of FODMAPs, which are notoriously difficult carbs for the human gut to process, and a primary trigger for IBS. The wild yeast and bacteria literally consume those specific carbohydrates as their primary fuel source during those 36 hours.
So they eat the very compounds that would otherwise cause us distress. That is so cool. And the way the bacteria manipulate the carbohydrates brings us directly to the blood sugar data, which is arguably the most surprising finding in these sources.
Oh, the glycemic control is incredible.
Right, because standard commercial white bread is basically the benchmark for a glycemic nightmare. It rapidly metabolizes into glucose, spikes your blood sugar, floods your system with insulin, and guarantees a crash 2 hours later.
But sourdough completely rewrites that glycemic response through structural interference. The organic acids produced by the bacteria actually physically alter the starch molecules in the dough. Acetic acid fundamentally changes the rate of starch gelatinization during baking.
So it acts like a chemical speed bump for our own digestive enzymes.
That is exactly how it functions. When you eat true sourdough, the specific structure of those acidified starches physically restricts your body's enzymes from rapidly breaking down the carbs. Plus, the acids delay gastric emptying, which is how fast food leaves your stomach.
Meaning a significantly lower glycemic index.
Exactly. Instead of a violent spike in blood glucose, the carbohydrates metabolize in a slow, sustained trickle, completely stabilizing insulin release.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though. We have covered mineral absorption, gluten degradation, and glycemic control, all highly physical metabolic processes. But Dr. Vanessa Kimball's research at the Sourdough School pushes this into cognitive territory.
Yeah, her clinical study focused on what she calls the BALM protocol, baking as lifestyle medicine. She had participants consume specifically formulated long-fermented sourdough over a 6-week period.
And the results weren't just about digestion.
Not at all. 89% of the participants reported statistically significant improvements in their mental health, mood regulation, and overall psychological well-being.
See, my immediate friction with that statistic was the temperature of the oven. Because the entire premise of gut health is usually rooted in consuming live probiotics. But when you bake a loaf of bread at 450 degrees Fahrenheit, you are incinerating that entire microbial ecosystem.
You are. You're eating dead bacteria.
So how on earth is a sterilized loaf of bread regulating human mood?
Well, the living bacteria die, yes. But their death leaves behind a profoundly impactful nutritional payload known as postbiotics.
Postbiotics?
Yeah, during the intense heat of baking, the bacterial cells basically burst open. This scattered debris consists of fragments from their cell walls, dead microbial biomass, and the rich reservoir of organic acids they synthesized.
So we aren't eating the workers. We are eating the architecture they built and the tools they left behind.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of the human microbiome, those postbiotic fragments act as highly selective signaling molecules and premium fuel for the bacteria already residing in your lower intestine.
Oh, I see.
Studies show that consuming the postbiotics found in true sourdough selectively stimulates the proliferation of specific keystone species in the gut, notably Akkermansia, Bifidobacterium, and Lactobacillus strains.
And because of the gut-brain axis, that physical and biochemical communication network linking our gut to our brain-feeding populations like Akkermansia directly influences the production of neurotransmitters, like serotonin, dopamine, GABA.
Exactly. We are utilizing the remnants of a 36-hour fermentation to optimize the microbial factories in our gut that manufacture our mood-regulating hormones. It fundamentally changes the definition of comfort food. It isn't just psychological comfort, it is active biochemical regulation of your central nervous system.
Wow. So knowing that the industrial 45-minute factory loaf strips away every single one of these metabolic, digestive, and cognitive benefits, the ultimate question becomes, how do we reclaim this process?
Right, because relying on the honor system at the grocery store clearly isn't working.
Definitely not. So reclaiming the process starts with building the microbial engine yourself. Cultured Food Life provides the mechanics for cultivating a starter, and it requires nothing more than flour, water, and just an understanding of the environment.
It is the ultimate exercise in biological minimalism. You are literally trapping wild yeast from the air and the flour.
And Cultured Food Life is very specific about the maintenance. They recommend this 1.1.1 feeding ratio to establish a really strong starter.
Yeah, the 1.1.1 ratio is crucial. By mixing half a cup of mature starter, half a cup of fresh flour, and half a cup of water, you are providing the exact hydration and carbs the microbes need to replicate efficiently. They also stress keeping it moist and using unbleached, high-protein flour for the best rise.
But I want to inject some realism here for you listening.
Mhm.
If you don't have 3 to 5 days to build a starter right now, how do you spot fake sourdough at the grocery store?
You have to act as an auditor of both the ingredient label and the structural integrity of the bread. First, check the label. True sourdough requires exactly 3 ingredients: flour, water, and salt.
That's it.
That's it. If you see commercial yeast listed separately, or E-numbers or preservatives, it is an industrial fake. True sourdough utilizes the lactic acid produced during the fermentation as its own natural preservative.
And visually, you want to look at the crust and the crumb, right?
It's exactly. Industrial bread, because it is hyperinflated in 45 minutes, will have a soft, uniform crust and perfectly even air holes inside. True sourdough creates a highly irregular internal structure. You will see massive air pockets right next to dense clusters. And the crust should be thick and practically shatter when you cut it.
Look for the biological chaos in the crumb. And once you do establish that starter at home, Cultured Food Life emphasizes it's not just for rustic loaves. You can make chocolate cherry bread, cinnamon pecan, jalapeno cheddar, lemon rosemary bowls, and even sourdough pizza crust.
Yeah, it allows you to systematically remove commercial yeast from your entire diet, upgrading the nutritional profile of every carbohydrate you bake.
So what does this all mean? It means that sourdough isn't just a trendy hobby, it's an incredibly versatile culinary tool. It's a 3,500-year-old biotechnology that dismantles anti-nutrients, protects our blood sugar, and even supports our mental health.
This raises an important question regarding our modern food systems. We traded a 36-hour, nutrient-unlocking biological partnership for a 45-minute mechanical shortcut. It forces you to look at the grocery store and wonder, what other critical, ancient food wisdom have we traded away for the sake of speed?
That is a staggering thought to consider. We sterilized our bread the exact same way we sterilized our environment, and our health paid the price for that convenience. But the immense upside is that this is a biological deficit you can actively reverse. So here is your challenge. Grab some flour and water today. The first step to making a starter takes less than 5 minutes.
You are resurrecting an ancient ecosystem right next to your coffee maker.
A microscopic rebellion against the industrial food complex. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking questions and feeding your curiosity. So the next time you look at a simple slice of toast, remember, it shouldn't just be a delivery system for butter. It should be a masterpiece of time. Catch you next time.